I see that we're live now.
I think we're live now.
I think so.
That's what it says.
It does say that.
I hope it's not lying. All right. Ready to kick this thing off?
Let's do it.
Okay. What are we calling this show? PMs?
No, that's like the worst title for a podcast episode ever.
All right.
PMs.
It is kind of bad because it'll look like PMS.
Right. Or like we're gonna start like privately messaging people.
Maybe we are.
Hey,
Hey.
you don't know about what I do after hours.
I don't need to know either. What are we
Let's
gonna
call
call
it. I don't know. Let's call it manager.
Manageriz?
Manageries.
Managerials. Let's just call it ideation. That's a good it's a good managerial word, ideation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Call it everyone. I don't give a shit.
I'll just call it managers.
Okay.
Okay.
Such a shitty title.
Well, then what's a better one?
There's not a better one. That's the problem.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic.
Okay, we're good.
Welcome to the Loosely Couple Podcast, episode 26. Tonight we're going to be talking about managers, I'm told. Product managers, project managers, and the other kind. I am your co-host, Jeff, and this is Matt. Matt, how's it going tonight?
It's going pretty good. Got an offer accepted on a house that I made, so hopefully everything goes well and I get to kind of have a house. And
It's always a good thing.
yeah, and I got an LLC set up beginning of the week or end of last week or sometime in between the last time we recorded and tonight. And things are really busy, and I have no money, so
But you didn't like the name that I suggested.
I forgot what you suggested.
Frostalicious.
But that's not what it is, though.
Well, that's... I know, but I think that Frostalicious would be a great... Like, you could be like, hey, I'm Matt Frost from Frostalicious LLC. Like, that's...
Yeah. People will be like, "What? You make ice cream?"
Well, there you go. That's a whole business. That's like a whole new business line for you. I don't know.
Hey, it's I don't know. No, if I ever start a second LLC, that'll be that name will be at the top of my list.
Excellent. If you want a PM for it, I'll be happy to join you.
A private message?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Indeed. Anyway, what we're really talking about is something that all of us as developers deal with, and I say deal with it in a nice, loving way, I think. Product managers and project managers are something that I think is interesting. It was, I guess for a long time, or maybe not a long time, but when I first started out as a developer, I wanted to be a project manager. I was like, that sounds like fun, like being able to. I guess I didn't really know.
Sorry.
Well, I didn't know what it was, I think. And I was like, this sounds like fun. You get to plan out projects and, kind of orchestrate them. And this will be a grand old time, but that's not exactly how it worked out when I first became a quote unquote project manager. So I thought it'd be a fun topic to talk about, just since there's, I guess there's not like wildly different definitions for these things, but this is something that comes up a lot, like working with other people who are leading or managing a project or a product, and how we as developers should interact with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
We're good.
Good talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but to echo I know I laughed at you, and I didn't laugh at you because I thought it was funnier that you were dumb or anything, because when I was at my first job, that was kind of the path that I went.
Yep.
Like even my boss at the time, he had me writing out like project plans and wanted me to kind of be in charge of not only doing all the programming because I was the only programmer in that department, but also, preparing all the what do they call them, artifacts,
Yeah.
um, you know, project planning sheets and timelines and all that kind of stuff. And for a
Gantt chart. Don't
while,
forget your Gantt chart.
oh yeah, gotta have a Gantt. This is before Agile, so there was no burn downs, but it was yeah, it wasn't very long after I got into that I realized that wasn't what I wanted to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess my first encounter with a real project manager and a real product manager, I was interested because it was, or I found it interesting because it was different than what I, in my own mind, had concocted as the definition of what these people do. Just because it wasn't, or it didn't seem as, I don't want to say like glorified, but it didn't seem as prestigious as I once thought. That once you become, and I saw someone else talking about this earlier on Twitter, probably last week or so. She was saying that it's sad that in our industry the path that we pay for people is you're a developer for 5 years, and then the goal is to become a manager. Like the goal is to become the next level to being developer is manager. And it's like you're taking people a lot of times who have very little experience and very little real understanding of how to develop software and saying you're now in charge of making sure that other people, other developers can develop software. You yourself have no idea how to do it.
Right.
And so she was talking about how silly it is that our industry is focused on this, and some of the downsides to education getting into this and so on and so forth. But I was just thinking about how that's another thing where it's like it feels like earlier in my career that I thought you become a developer, you learn how to develop software for a while, and then you become a project manager where you're not necessarily always developing software. You're now getting other people to develop it. And so enough about how software is developed that you can tell 5 people, okay, you do this, you do this, you do this, and then we can have this done in 5 weeks. And in reality, that's not how it works out at all.
But if you add 5 more people, you can have it done in 2.5 weeks.
Man, why did I think of this?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's I don't know. I think I agree with you. I think it's changing a little bit now. Like, I know when I first started, it was very much that way. Like, yeah, like you put in your time as a developer, as a junior, whatever, and you kind of strive for that position of being in charge, like being the boss and being the one calling the shots and making the decisions. And I feel like it's changing now. I feel like the obsession now is like more focused around becoming a lead or an architect or a CTO.
Yeah.
So I feel like that has, changed some in the last, decade. But it's like, it's weird. It's one of those things that, like, if you've never done it, I'm managing now for the first time in my career. Like I said, I've been doing this for about a decade, and it's one of those things that I always thought I wanted to do. I was like, I had that same kind of mindset, and until you start doing it, you don't realize like how much responsibility you really have.
Yeah.
I guess depending on where you're managing, if you're at a large company and you're one of 50 managers, your impact may not be as pronounced as if you're at a small company and you have one dev team and you're managing that dev team.
Yeah.
But I think it's like, for me, it was really humbling because I was like, yeah, I know my way around the software development process. I can feel like I can put some good policies and practices in place and get some tools involved that obviously we would want to use, and
avoid hiring some tools.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's been a challenge. I mean, it's been a challenge, balancing time. I'm one of those fortunate, I guess, or unfortunate, or it's fortunate for me and maybe not for my company. I don't know. Uh, Managers that I get to do both. I get to manage and write code.
Yeah.
And so, juggling that time and juggling those responsibilities is a challenge sometimes. And um, I mean, I can't imagine working like I feel like if you don't know the software development process, you have to be like a damn good manager of people, right? And that's a really hard thing to do, I think.
Well, I think yeah. I mean, I think it's extremely tough to be a development manager or an engineering manager, whatever you want to call it, if you don't have a background and understanding of the process. Because if you don't have any insight into really how to develop software, like how teams work well together, and what type of collaboration and when you need the collaboration, and
Hmm.
how to motivate people and how people grow. If you don't have the insight into that because you went to business school or whatever, not that there's anything wrong with that, but you went to business school and you're like, hey, I'm now a mid-level manager and I've managed people before, so clearly I can manage this, you know, product development team. Like I can manage these people who are building something. It's difficult because especially developers need their manager to go up to bat for them a lot and to be able to envision problems really early on that aren't necessarily just people oriented.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've run into in the past where you've got a manager who is extremely good at people management, but you can't count on that person to fully understand the technical problems or the process problems that you're bringing forth. You're like, this is a blocker for me because I can't do my job without this stuff done. And if they don't understand what you're talking about, now it's on you to fix the problem or you to figure out how to fix the problem. And
Right.
that's not really the best use of your time necessarily.
Right.
So that's a problem. And so that's where I think this whole promotion to manager probably came from, is people realize that having just people managers in development positions or in development groups wasn't working. So they're like, well, how do we get managers who understand the people side and understand the tech side?
Right.
And you're like, well, I know that this person who's an engineer, I know she's really good at talking to people and she's really good at writing code, so she understands the whole thing, so let's make her a manager now, or whatever the case is. So that's where I think that drive came from.
Yeah. No, I could definitely see that. That's the thing, though. It's like there's such a balance um, to finding like an effective manager. Like I
Yep.
agree. Like having somebody like on the tech side that knows their stuff is a huge advantage. At the same time, you can have somebody that knows their stuff on the tech side and is a complete tool or doesn't know how to interact with people or doesn't know how to lead or um,
Or doesn't
motivate
want to.
people or doesn't want to,
Yeah.
right? Maybe they're there against their will and it was kind of like take this promotion to manager or find a new job and
But
they
yeah,
just
or maybe they got caught in the situation where it was like, they wanted to advance and they're like, well, we don't have it set up. Like we don't have the stuff in place for this whole, CTO track thing. We have
right.
VP track so you can become a people manager, but we don't have
Hmm.
this. And so you're like, but I want to stay here. I like what we're doing and I want to continue to code. But I need some professional growth. So like, oh, I'll become a people manager now. And if that's not something you're interested in doing, don't take that. Don't take that
Right.
offer. That's not, you're not going to do your team any favors. You're not doing yourself any favors.
Right. But I mean, there's a balance. You have to find somebody that knows the technology and somebody that's a good leader, somebody that's a good people manager. It kind of has the whole package, and it's for me, it's kind of the same um, type of person. Like, I've always been pretty thoroughly convinced that very, very few people in this world are really good, like graphic designers and really good programmers, like at the same time. And there are some, so don't get me wrong, but
Unicorn.
yeah, it's they're two. In a lot of ways, they're two different mindsets, and both take a lot of effort and time to master, or to approach mastery. And I don't think anyone ever masters it, but it's the same way with tech people and good leaders. Like, I don't know, I feel like I'm learning new things all the time about what leading people is and what it should be and what I'm doing what I'm doing different from what those ideal situations are. And it's a lot, like, I don't know, there's a romanticized notion, I think, that a lot of people have, and I think it goes away as you get older, but like especially like younger people. I know I was this way when I was young, but like a romanticized notion of being in charge.
Yeah.
Like somehow, like you're gonna rule over all of these people, and they're gonna, you know, respect you because you're in charge, and you've earned it, and like I find more and more as I'm fortunate to have a very small team right now, so it's easier to kind of get a feel working with two people compared to the 8 or 9. But I find myself doing a lot of the stuff that I always imagined I would be giving to other people. Like, there's this thing we got to do, and I'm like, yeah, okay, well, I'll assign that to someone. I find I end up doing it not even like hesitantly, like, I think building like that strong team unit is important, and sometimes, like everybody's got to pitch in and do stuff that nobody wants to do. But it's just that notion that you have kind of going in versus the reality of, if the team doesn't get stuff done, I'm not doing my job, and if that means I have to do stuff, then that's what it is.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting thing that I've also picked up, recently is, you in talking to the people, they're like, oh, well, why would you fix that random bug that popped up, or why would you spend time, cleaning up the documentation on this, or whatever the thing is. It's like some task that is quote unquote menial or not important, or something that's like, hey, I just I need some tweak to a report, or just something very kind of off the wall thing that needs to get done.
Right.
It's like, well, I could, of course, go to employee X and be like, hey, employee X, I know you're working on this thing that we said was important enough to put into this current iteration, and we want it done by the by the end of the iteration. However, could you spend a day working on this menial task here, just to clean it up, because it's important as well. But I want you to stop doing I want you to stop your forward progress on the thing that we think is more important and do this instead. Or someone could just do it. And this is something that I picked up a little bit from my dad. Like, his company, he'll be out at job sites or something, and he's there just checking to make sure that everything's like where it should be in terms of the schedule, and checking quality and that type of stuff. And then he's like, oh, it's a dirty job site, I know the owners, whatever, are coming by the next day, so he'll like sweep it up, he'll like clean it up, pick things up, or he'll go like change light bulbs, or little tasks that are you think that's some job that you would give to a 17-year-old apprentice that's just starting out in the industry. And you're like, hey, guess what you get to do? And that's what I used to do when I was in high school, is go sweep job sites for him a lot. But he does it, and people have asked him before, like, why are you doing this? Like, you surely your time is better spent doing something else. And he's like, well, I mean, honestly, yes, I could, or I probably could not do this and get someone else to do it, and then I could go to the net to somewhere else and think or something, or call someone on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
But he's like, then I've now taken somebody off of another job and got them over here, or called someone out and said, hey, divert now 2 hours of your day, because you have to drive out here and do the work, and then and then go back to whatever they were supposed to be doing.
Right.
Or I could spend the 10 minutes to do it.
Right.
And so like I kind of learned that from him as something that, there's sometimes when you just have to say, I'm just going to get this done so it doesn't bother other people who are doing other stuff that is also important. Like, just because I can tell someone to do something doesn't mean I'm going to every single time.
Well, I think it builds, trust and, I don't know what the word is. I was going to say synergy. It's probably synergy.
Well, you're a manager.
Yeah. I think, like, again, kind of that romanticized notion when you're younger of like being in charge and directing people and having everyone kind of do your bidding as it pertains to your job. I think people start to resent that. They start to see you not as an equal. They start to see you as somebody that, they can't trust. And I think, doing that stuff, like I'm sure, like with the story you told about your dad, I'm sure as he's in there sweeping out, the garage or whatever, that there's workers that notice him doing that and A, appreciate it, and B, are glad that they don't have to do it.
Yeah.
And it's a small gesture, like you said. It might take him 10 minutes to do it. It takes him 10 minutes to sweep out a garage, and it's something that has to be done. They look at that and they go, okay, this guy knows how to work. He's not just a suit. He's not just the business end of it. Like, this guy knows how to work. And I don't know. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing is just having that coordinated effort, like having that everyone kind of working towards the same goal. And
yeah,
if you're managing and you're not working towards that same goal with your team, you're hoping that they accomplish your goal for you. You're gonna kind of lose some of that unity.
Yeah, definitely don't become managerial dead weight.
Right.
Yeah, that's good advice. So that's like general management, right? Like I feel like that's a lot of general management. I feel like there's also a lot of overlap between general management and project and product management. But I wanted to talk a little bit about those two just because they're things that, or they're titles that get used a lot in the industry, and obviously they're going to be different depending on what company you're at. Like, maybe responsibilities are somewhat different, especially since there is overlap between what they do, like their roles. But I wanted to talk about some of the differences. So I'm going to put you on the spot, Matt, but what do you feel like a product manager does?
That's an agile thing, right?
Well, I mean, it could be, I guess.
Isn't that an official agile title?
You're talking about product owners, right?
Oh, whatever. All right, it's different then. What do product managers do?
What is a product manager?
I would say they manage the product. No, I think I don't know. Like, it's a tricky question, I think, in the sense that you've got two different type of environments. I think in like a product type environment, right, where you don't really have direct clients like you would in consulting. It's a little bit different. I think they, manage deadlines and, just kind of coordinate, make sure that everything needs to be done for that release or for that, launch or whatever is complete. And I mean, I imagine it's just a lot of emails, phone calls, and talking to people. but like in the other environment, like when you're in consulting, you still may have a product. Maybe you're doing something um, like a CRM or something, and they're more directly interacting with the client because it's a product, but it's a product for a particular client. So most of their communication is between the client talking about what needs to be done, um, organizing priorities, deadlines, things like that. So I, for me, it's a little bit different.
Hmm.
Like I know it's a job that I was at in Chicago. Um, at the time, I don't know what they call them now, but at the time we called them client engagement managers. So they would just go around marrying all the clients. And no, I was kidding. Sorry, that was a bad joke.
No,
No, they would
it
just
was a
go
terrible joke.
around. They would just go around engaging with all the clients.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think that's or the reason I asked was just wanted to everyone's experience with these titles is going to be different depending on where you've worked and what you've done and
Right.
how refined it's been. So to me, a I think like the main difference between product management and project management is product management is more about defining what business objectives are and like defining effectively like defining solutions or uh, or like products. I can't use that word, but defining solutions to customers' needs. So like that client
Mhm.
engagement stuff that you're talking about, like those are real things that someone needs this tool or this software package to do something. So a product
Mhm.
manager's responsibility is to figure out what is the objective of this particular business, like what are we trying to do, and then how can we build something that satisfies the needs of the clients that we're trying to reach or the customers that we're trying to reach. Where the project manager is the person that like you were mentioning that deals with timelines and like the tactical side of implementing the business objective. So
Right.
they project managers work on things that satisfy the product manager's visions effectively.
So it's just managers all the way down.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of terms for how do you get stuff done, right?
Right.
Yeah, and so I think but I do think that is important because it's it's been my experience that there's a lot of overlap in those two jobs and those two roles. Like, you have people who are called project managers and they do project management and product management.
Hmm.
And then, the same for the other side that you have product managers who manage products and deal with projects. And I
Right.
think that's where some of the disconnect comes or some of the problems start arising with when you've got um, developers and product people together and the product person is fulfilling five different roles. They're dealing with project management, so timelines and resource management and risk management, so on and so forth. And then they're also dealing with you know being the business liaison, like being able to say like being able to define what the business should be doing and how the um, customers are going to be satisfied by whatever you're working on. So they've got not really competing, but they're working on multiple levels of the same idea. And
Right.
then developers are kind of stuck in I'm waiting on the project manager to talk to the product manager to figure out what it is that we're supposed to work on.
Yeah. No, it's fair. I
It's
mean, no, I mean, I I think we've both been doing this a little while. I'm sure we've both had experiences where, you know, you have good managers and I won't call them bad, but less effective managers when it comes to that type of stuff. One of the biggest things I saw, and I think it kind of goes back to your point before about kind of striving to be that project manager, probably
Mhm.
just because it has the word manager in the title, um, is like there's been a few places that I've been at where there's been this like almost like power struggle where like the product or project manager or client engagement person or whatever it is, um, because they're managing the product, because they're in charge of setting these deadlines and talking to the client and getting all this stuff, that they're like in charge of your team and you, right? And there's I don't know, in my experiences, with a few exceptions, but in my experiences, it's always been a battle between the development side and the management side, and I've never really understood, um, why that is. Like, you feel like if anybody should be working together closely, it should be the project manager and like the team lead.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if anybody should be best buddies and trying to work together and make things as easy as possible for the other person, it would be those two people. But there's this, I don't know, hierarchy battle or battle for power that, in a lot of my experiences, has just derailed everything. Like, I don't know if you've had similar experiences or not. I think everybody has, there's good managers and there's bad managers and there's probably lots in between.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know. I mean, that's the one thing I think. I don't know if we're at the point where we're going to start dishing out advice yet, but um, I don't know. It always makes me wonder about people's motives for wanting to manage. Like, is your motive to be in charge? Is it to be the boss? Is it to be the person that everything kind of flows through? Or is it to lead a team to, produce good software, to do whatever needs to be done to get the product done right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say if you want to be the boss, be the I guess the gateway for all things, you should probably just quit. That's in my opinion, that's not the best way to approach this whole management concept. Like, I think from my perspective, a manager's job is more about empowerment than it is anything else. Like, you're as a manager of a group of people, your job is to understand the strengths and abilities of those people and get them working on the things that they can do well,
Right.
and then get other things out of their way. So if there's a big problem, like this needs to be solved, but you can't because there's infrastructural problems, and that's a whole other team. Like, your job as a manager is to get in there and make sure that that happens, that problem goes away.
Right.
If you just want to be the sole source of all information flow into your team, you're going to drive yourself crazy because that's very difficult to do, and B, you're hurting the capacity of your team by your own understanding. It's kind of like I guess in my experience, it's more like the game telephone, where if you've got one person who's working as the gateway for business objectives coming into an engineering group,
Hmm.
that person is obviously going to explain problems and take business objectives and turn them into their own understanding of things.
Right.
Whereas when you've got a team of people, it's a lot easier for different perspectives to work in and really find out, much broader problems and different approaches and that type of thing. So in my own personal um, experience as a team leader, manager, whatever you want to say, I try to say, hey, instead of it being, you know, I am the point person that everyone talks to, and then I distribute the tasks appropriately. It's more, um, I take the discussions that aren't necessarily something that I think are timely for, they don't need to be discussed right now with the whole team. But once we reach the point where we're talking about like, how is this business objective going to fit into the engineering ecosystem, the whole team is involved, right? Like everyone should be there. And that's kind of how I approach things. I look at it and say, okay, what are we trying to gain from this conversation? If it's an approach to solve like some business objective, everyone needs to be there because everyone's going to have things that need to be said.
Right.
But if it's like I need to talk about some very specific detail about some implementation or something that isn't understood, I'll take the conversation initially and decide if it's something that needs to be brought to everyone else or not. And if it does, then I get everyone involved in a new conversation instead of me just taking what I took out of the conversation and saying, hey, everyone, here's what I have learned. And that's worked really well for me so far.
Yeah. No, I think that's just it. I think, I try to do the same thing. I know I don't always succeed in doing it, but I think definitely, involving everyone, making everyone feel like their opinion matters, when it's appropriate, and then, letting them, like, I guess that's the biggest thing for me is, like, I picked up so much from certain managers where, um, you get micromanaged and it just made you so unproductive and so, like you were doing nothing all day but answering emails and getting pulled into little side meetings and what do they call that in Agile? Probably something stupid. But like that's the biggest thing for me is like I come into work and I know the work that has to be done, and I know at this point probably not completely, but I'm getting a better understanding of what everybody on the team is good at and what they really excel at, and the types of tasks that would be better suited for them just based on their interest in it or their natural ability to kind of do it, and just kind of letting them do their job. Like I guess that's kind of the way I look at it, and maybe it always sounds a lot meaner than I mean for it to sound, but like I approach it like you're an adult. We're paying you to do a job. You come in, you do your job.
Yeah.
Part of your job, and that doesn't mean you have to know everything or know how to do everything. But, part of your job is coming in and doing the work that's it's assigned to you or that you pick up or whatever, and doing it well. And if you have to ask questions, ask questions. If you have to collaborate, collaborate. It's not so much like an isolated, like you do your thing, and just get shit done. But like if you don't know the answer, like part of your job is to find out the answer. Whether you have to Google, whether you have to ask somebody, whether you have to, buy a book or buy a screencast or something, whatever it is you have to do, like that's your job to understand what needs to be done and find the best way to do it.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I guess no one's ever told me that viewpoint is mean, and maybe it's just the way that I phrase it and kind of go about it. But like, honestly, me standing over someone's shoulder saying, "Hey, is that done yet? Is that done yet?" isn't an effective use of my time or theirs. And when it really comes down to it, like if you just can't do the job that you've been hired to do, like doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you a lazy work. It's for whatever reason it doesn't work out. You just have to part ways.
Yeah.
And that's and that's just the way I look at it. Like I want people to come in and I can trust them. I can trust that they're going to do what they need to do, and if they don't know how to do it, they're going to find out. And you can work with those people all day long. I mean, you have to if you hire them, I guess. But
you don't have to. You can get rid of them.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But I mean, I guess as long as they're working there, you have to work with them all day long. But
yeah. No, I get what you're saying. Like I think that's one of the signs, I guess, of, or I guess one of the things that comes up when you've got emergencies or very tight deadlines or um, investors breathing down your neck or whatever the situation is, and you've got a manager who can't really, or doesn't really understand the tech side. I mean, that's when I think it really starts to show, is when there's stress involved for one reason or another, and it's the constant, like you're mentioning, the are you done yet? How long is it going to take? Like, I need to know. Like, give me a really good estimate. I need a 100% accuracy estimate of how long this is going to take you to finish. And you're like, well, every time you ask me that, it's going to take another 20 minutes at least for me to
Right.
get back into what I was doing. So, maybe we shouldn't be having this conversation every 5 minutes. And I think that's something that's also very hard to deal with as a manager, as a project manager, when you're dealing with something like, um, you've got a timeline, right? Like, you've got this thing where you need to deliver something by a certain date because you know, in so we're going to tie all these together, but product management, right? Like, your main thing is you're looking at how to satisfy a customer or client's needs, and sometimes there's a you know only effective if done before this date kind of situation, right? Like,
Right.
you really need to know, or you need to have something or have the feature or whatever done by a certain date in order for it to be useful. Otherwise, it's not going to be useful for another year or 2 years or 10 years or whatever. So sometimes there are situations where product managers like, hey, this particular feature, we need it done in a month, and then the project manager's like, okay, well, let me look at the timeline. And a good project manager at that time is gathering information and trying to figure out, can it even be done in that timeline?
Right.
And then if it can, this is that whole MVP thing that we talked about a couple of episodes ago, where you have to figure out, like, what is the feature that we can deliver within this time box. And then from there, that's when your development process, whatever it is, however agile it is, kicks in, and you actually work on the thing. And so you've got a project manager managing the timeline, and the product manager sweating because he or she's needs it by a certain date, and then a business owner or a stakeholder or something, it's breathing down the product manager's neck because they're like, well, we need that thing and we need it now.
Right.
So you've got mid-level managers who are sitting there saying, well, I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to go ask someone for a status update.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the worst. Like, that's why you need people in those roles that understand the tech side,
Right.
so that there isn't as much of that whole distraction of just trying to get status updates just to satisfy the curiosity of the timeline, right? Like,
Right.
you have to have someone who's active and can be like, I don't want to say asynchronous or passive about it, but someone that can look at work that's being done and translate that into an understanding of, is this project on task or not, or is it on track to be accomplished by its date? And that's really, really hard to do, but I think that's something that involves all of those disciplines, and that's why I think it's a good example of what all these roles should be doing. Is if you've hired correctly and you have the right people in these different roles, and you have a product manager and a product manager who are hopefully different people, they're able to keep an eye on satisfying the business objectives and keep an eye on the timeline side, because the project manager probably has a background in software development,
Mm-hmm.
whereas the product manager may not.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's something I try to be like aware of. Like like you said, the status updates. Like I try not to ask for those. Sometimes you need to know where something's at. Like I hate doing it, But sometimes I'll have to walk over to Justin and say, hey, how, hey, Justin, how's it going? Give him a little Lumberg there, or Limburg, whatever. And
Lumberg.
yeah, whatever. I was thinking of the. Never mind. Um, I'll have to do that, or I'll have to say, oh, hey, Rachel, how's that coming along? Um, not to be annoying, but I typically, when I feel like I'm at a point where I have to ask that, I'll try to make it more into like an equal transaction instead of just saying like, "Hey, are you done?" No, I'm not done. Okay, well, I'll try to get done. Like that's a completely pointless conversation, right? So I try, and again, I don't always do this, but I try to make myself available to be like, "Hey, how's everything going with that? Is there anything that you need? Is there anything I can get you? Is there anything that's in your way that's stopping you from doing this?" Sometimes it's other work that's coming in on, alongside a different project.
Hmm.
Um, and if they said I really need a cup of coffee, like I would go get them a cup of coffee. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's you come into it and you kind of it's like a give and take thing. Like I need to know. I promise. I'm not going to ask you every hour where you're at. There are certain times where I need to know, but I want to make sure that I'm asking in a way of like, are you stuck on something? Do you need help? And you haven't got to the point where you need to ask or
Yeah.
feel like you need to ask or um, are you getting slammed by something that I can't see and you need me to kind of stop the flow of that other stuff coming in. So um, there's a way that you do it. Yeah, I try to never do it out of curiosity. Like, hey, just curious where you're at. Like, usually there's a reason somebody's asking me, or I'm trying to set up things for the week or for the following week or whatever. Um, but it's a challenge. It's a challenge for me anyway, to kind of be hands off because I'm used to doing everything. I'm used to being involved in everything and having my hands in everything.
Yeah.
And it's been a really good exercise in um, patience and trust for me. Like, I don't know, if I try to get my hands in something, my fear is always that whoever I'm trying to like help or do work with or for or take over whatever someone's doing, that it's like I'm taking this because I don't trust you, and I feel like that's how it comes across, and it's not. Like, I know the people that I work with are great at their jobs. Like, it's not an issue of trust. It's my problem. It's me like wanting to control it, and I don't know. There's so much that you have to learn about managing um and dealing with managers that just comes from experience.
Yeah.
Like I feel like now, whereas maybe 5 years ago, if someone had come up to me um, while I was in the middle of something, it was like, "Hey, can I get a status report on that really important thing that you're probably working really hard on right now?" I would, probably like type up I would stop what I was doing and like, "Here's an official status report. It's not, things are progressing nicely, but we're still not quite there yet." And make it all sound all goofy. Whereas like now, if somebody did it, like, what's the status report? I would just say it's not done. That's the status is incomplete, and you know, at some point after I was not being a standoffish programmer like we're stereotyped to be, I would go to that person and I would say, "Look, you're wasting your time coming over to ask me that because I'm not going to stop what I'm doing to answer a stupid question."
Yeah.
I
So
would I would phrase it better than that.
yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the interesting problems that I'm sure it's not unique to developers, but you know, there isn't a progress bar. Like there isn't really you know, a meter or something on you open up or you start working on a task or a issue or a story or whatever it is that you call it. You start working on it. There's not like a percent done status indicator in your editor that says, oh, I'm 37% done. I've been able to accomplish this 37% in this many minutes. Therefore, projected end time is going to be this date. And like, that's why I always, people ask me, oh, how long do you think this is going to take? And I'm like, well, a 50% accurate guess would be, it's going to take this long. Like, I think it's, roughly around this based on my previous experience and my understanding of what you're asking me. And then it's like, oh, well, do you think you could have it done in 2 days? And it's like, well, I mean, maybe, but I don't know. Like it's going to take as long as it takes. Like I literally don't know at this point. And, we talked about estimation before, but
right.
It's one of those things where it's like, especially when you're in the middle of solving something and someone's asking you for what the status is, and if I think you could wrap that up by today, you just don't know. Like it's a lot of times you just do not know. Like there's been tasks in the past couple of weeks that I've been working on where it's like, okay, cool, I got most of what I wanted done, and then I did this little refactoring here, and I ended up breaking a bunch of tests that were written very brutally against the way that particular implementation worked. So now I'm going to go fix all of those. So it's like, am I done with the task? I mean, yes, I'm done with what I was supposed to do, I guess. But then when in the process of being a good developer, I cleaned up a particular problem that was related to what I was doing, I ended up needing to fix these other problems. So I don't know what the answer to your question is. Like if what you're asking and what I feel like a lot of times people are asking when they're asking for, hey, you think you're going to be done anytime soon, or when you think you're going to deliver this, is what's your confidence level that you can actually solve this problem? And is it going to be, is it going to be like a long time from now? Like, do you know right now that you're completely blocked with something? I think is what people are trying to ask, instead of, I mean, no one really needs to know the exact hour that you're going to deliver something, or at least in my experience, no one ever really needs to know that. It's not like well, I mean, I guess there are situations where you need to know, but it's very rare that you're going to completely blow something up if you deliver it on a Monday instead of a Friday, like it's, or, you
Right.
instead of Friday, deliver it the following Monday. Like most likely things aren't going to explode or implode based on that. And if they are, then that's very poor time management on your entire company's or your entire team's part. But, what people are generally needing to know is not, hey, how many more lines of code do you have to write, Matt? It's more, hey, Matt, is this achievable? Like,
right.
Do you know right now, are you confident that this is going to make it in? That's what people are really wanting to know, I think.
Right. Right. Yeah. And they don't know how to ask the question in a way where you can actually give them a meaningful answer.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, I think it's I don't know. It's that opposite. I don't know. I think that's why it's really important to work with people on the management side that have a background in whatever it is you're doing, whether you're, writing software or, making Volvos or
digging ditches.
Yeah. I mean, it's important to, like if you have dug like literally hundreds of ditches, you're going to know how long it takes to dig a ditch and different types of soil and clay. You're going to like have at least a really good baseline understanding for what that takes. And
Yeah.
obviously digging ditches and making software are two completely different things. Digging ditches is just, you can get it done as fast as you can move a shovel.
Unless there's unmarked gas lines or fossils or,
Well, I would just blow right through the fossils, dude.
Well, I mean, that's
The
This is what
the
developer
missing
life
link.
is, right?
It's in a pile over there. No, but I mean, things like that. Like you don't know when you're writing software when you're going to hit that hidden gas line.
Yep.
Or when you're going to realize that something that was built, maybe before you even started working there is going to force you to kind of change, completely change directions on the way you're implementing a certain feature. Like, like you could give people a perfect world estimate and say, oh, could you get this done in 2 days? And like, yeah, if absolutely nothing went wrong or was different from how I understood it, then yeah. But I don't know, in my career, I don't know that that's ever happened. There's always something you forget about or something that's lurking, below the surface.
Yeah.
Like a alligator.
I mean, that's why it's important to be agile, right?
No, I feel like that just makes you talk to people more. Like you just instead of actually doing work, you have to talk about the work that you're going to do, and then talk about why you didn't get it done, and then
Well, I mean, if
tell
you're
everyone how you're going to do it tomorrow, and then just basically repeat. It's like waterfall of meetings is basically what it is.
yeah, I mean, I understand the criticism, but I do think that it is something that we're constantly working on as a team is just getting better at being able to voice that something is difficult to estimate because you don't understand it, or because it was written from a weird perspective, or we don't understand the underlying side of this, so we can't give you something that's accurate. So like all these things play into it, and I think that's where the communication side of agile is useful. Just looking at those kinds of problems and being
Sorry, I
able
had something in my throat.
being able to say, hey, we originally thought this would take us 5 or 3 story effort points, but in reality it took us 8 story effort points.
Moon units.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's it's useful to have the conversation to basically say, we estimated this one less than it actually was because this problem. And I think that's the kicker. Like a lot of people, like you're saying, they just they go through the meeting motion just because their manager is hooked on Scrum or whatever and has said, oh well, we have to have these stand-ups and you should tell me what you did yesterday and what you did today, or what you're doing today, and then what's in your way. And that's fine. Most of that information should be gleaned from, or should be able to be gleaned from, looking at comments in issue trackers or whatever, right? Like you could see, oh, so and so started this task yesterday and closed this one out and said this one's in QA now and this one's doing this now. Like you should be able to glean the mechanic side of the stand-up from looking at issue trackers. But
it's a bullshit meeting.
Not always.
Because anytime you try to bring up anything above and beyond, like what are you doing? What are you going to do? What did you try to do? What aren't you going to do? Like anytime you get past all that stuff, like they're like, oh well, just that's the word I was looking for before. Just let's parking lot that. Let's put that in the parking lot. Am I right? Is that a word? Is that a term?
Yeah. So for us, it's usually let's take it offline or let's talk about this afterwards.
Okay, you can use whatever nerdy phrase you want.
And the reason for that is, and I like this, because I feel like a lot of times you end up in a meeting where it drones on and on about a particular topic, which maybe you have a loose interest in, but you don't really care. And so it's a lot easier when people are cognizant of everyone else's time and interest and input.
Nobody wants to be in a stand-up.
Nobody wants to be in a stand-up?
No.
I think it's
except for managers.
No, I mean it's been useful for us just So an example may be someone's like, hey, yesterday I started working on, this, we'll just call it like a estimation tool. And I ran into this weird problem with, this particular database field. And then someone else said to say, oh, I can help you with that. Just we'll take this outside of the meeting. Like that conversation wouldn't have ever happened. That one person would have sat there and tried to figure out a problem that someone else already knew the answer to. And maybe that's a communication problem. Maybe it's not. Like it just depends. But without needing to say, what you're working on and needing to express that something was stopping you from getting it done, that conversation would have never happened.
I don't know. I don't know if I buy that.
Yeah, well, you don't have to agree, but
I won't. I won't.
Yeah.
No, I just don't like. For me, like most of the effective uses of my time when it has come to meetings has been outside of the stand-up. It has been in those parking lot or offline or whatever goofy phrase you want to put to it. Like that's where, for me, in my experience, the stuff gets. I can sit around and listen to people like, I don't know, talk about. Well, yeah, I did this yesterday. Like, if I want to know, I'll go look at the issue tracker. I don't give a shit.
Okay, so here's the question: if there wasn't a parking lot, would you have ever had the conversation that you thought were useful?
What do you mean if there wasn't a parking lot?
So you said the only time you've ever gained anything from stand-ups is afterwards when people were discussing the things that weren't relevant to the stand-up or that shouldn't have been discussed during the stand-up. What percentage of those do you think would have actually happened had there not been a place when they started talking about it and someone said, hey, this should be taken offline or in the parking lot or whatever?
Well, in like in my case, I think it's probably different for everyone. In my case, I think I would have still had every single one of those conversations.
You think so?
Yeah. But I mean, as I'm sure you know, I'm a talker. And I talk to people. And it doesn't have to be in some goofy, ceremonial, passing of the speaking ball in order to talk. We actually had to do that one time. Actually, it wasn't a ball. It was an Angry Bird plush toy.
They're not sponsoring.
No, Angry Bird is not sponsoring. That was not
a bird.
It was a bird. It was a
generic bird toy.
An irritated-looking bird. But and it's. I don't know. I mean, I just don't feel like in those meetings. And again, it depends on your team, and it depends on. There's a lot of things. So I guess for me to blanketly say that all stand-up meetings are a complete waste of time and should be blown off the face of the earth might be a slight hyperbole.
Might.
But at the same time, like, I don't know. They're just... Why have an issue tracker if you're just going to stand around and bullshit about stuff all day? Why do any of that? Why keep track of anything? Why not just make your issue tracker, make your stand-up an hour long, and just have everybody write down what everyone else is doing? I mean, it just seems like just such a waste of time to me.
But see, that's why it would be a waste of time if that's what you treated it as.
But that's what
your issue tracker.
So it either turns into, in my experience, again, I'm just speaking from my experience, it either turns into a stupid meeting where people just recite the same thing day after day and doesn't ever like change. It's just like, I did this, the end. And everyone does that, and then you basically, have to go drink 5 cups of coffee to get out of the fog that meeting put you in. Or they end up being 45 minutes long. There's no other way to have a stand-up. Either like bore people nearly to death by the same repetitive nonsense, or make it into a meeting that's not at all what it's intended to be. Those are the only two options.
There's secret option number 3, where you turn.
And that's just go straight to the parking lot.
Useful.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I mean, I kind of understand what you're saying, but for me, I think that
really, because I don't.
The point of a stand-up is, and it may not apply to you since you're quote unquote a talker. But for some people, they won't. There's no other time if they weren't, in a discussion, they would never tell someone, "Hey, I accomplished this thing," or "Hey, I'm having trouble with this," or "I don't understand how this works." Like there's a lot of developers who, feel like it's their job to understand everything all the time, and they should never need help or input from anyone else, and they can just slam keys until a solution comes out. And I feel like stand-ups really help in situations where you need people to talk that won't necessarily take the time to tell someone, "Hey, this is a problem," or "Hey, this thing is not understood," or whatever, and they're not going to talk outside of that. Like they're not going to have that opportunity, or they're not going to give themselves the opportunity to tell someone that this random thing is blocking the way for them to do their job. Like I think that's part of it.
Well, so what I'm hearing you say, and you can tell me if you're saying something different, is that there is going to be people on the team who aren't comfortable like asking for help or communicating really at all, and that you're going to waste the rest of the team's time to make sure that one person has an opportunity to talk.
No, I think you're oversimplifying it. Like, so here's the thing, right? If I tell you something, if I'm just like in passing, I say, "Man, I can't figure out why this test that I'm using, I'm trying to mock PDO and it's just not working. Like, I just don't understand why I can't fake the database in here. But I've been working on it for, since yesterday." If I tell you that just in passing, like, I don't personally, from my perspective, I don't see it as a problem, because I'm like, this should work. It's just a class like everything else. But from your perspective, you have experience with that. And as soon as I said, "I'm having trouble with this test because I'm trying to mock PDO and it's just not working," you knew exactly what the solution was, right? So like,
use MySQL extension.
Yeah. So I think that's where stand-ups are useful, because it's not necessarily that someone is, afraid to talk, but they just don't, or they just haven't, a lot of times you're saying things and you don't realize that you need to say something. Like you just say something and it clicks with someone else. And that you can't always have that communication in an issue tracker, because I mean, really, honestly, do you go into the issue tracker every time you hit a stumbling block and say, "Dear diary, today I couldn't figure out how to mock PDO. I'm going to pick that up tomorrow," for someone to see? And then if you do write comments like that, do you really feel like everyone on your team should be reading every task that you're working on?
It's not even that, because nobody's going to write actual meaningful things in the ticket. It's like if you're expecting that to happen, you might as well expect Agile to work. No, it's having a little bit of awareness of what's going on around you. Like, hey, that ticket for, doing this thing that, again, not to force people to estimate it, but like, hey, that ticket for that feature that you're writing has been open for a week. Your updates are drivel. Like, what's the problem? This is a relatively straightforward feature to implement. Like, I don't know. I guess that's the thing, is like, you want to make people comfortable, like with talking with the team. You want to make people feel safe. You want to make people feel, like they can get help if they need it. In a majority of the situations that I've been in, that I found myself in, people just don't. And there's nothing. We were agile and fragile and all that stuff, like in a couple different jobs. And if people don't talk, they don't talk. There's like a meeting isn't going to bring you out of it. Or times where people have been stuck on stuff in a meeting, and maybe it comes to light a little bit through, the 3-hour stand up that they're struggling with something, and then you offer to help them on it, and they're like, "No, I got it." Like, you don't got it. You've been trying to mock PDO for a week. You don't got it. Let's just put that out there. You don't got it. And they refuse all attempts to just get the feature done. And so, again, that's not everybody. And I know I'm kind of like just taking two groups of people and making my point with them. But having a stand-up or not having a stand-up isn't going to change the personality, the outgoing flow of information, or the willingness to ask for and accept help in anybody. Just not going to. If people don't want to accept help, they're just not going to accept help until something so monumental in their career happens that they realize that that's what they need to do. Like me saying, come to this, 15-minute bullshit meeting and tell me what's going on, and then we'll help you. If they don't want help, it's a complete waste of time. And I find more and more, like the majority, I would say the majority, I have no statistics or facts or reason or anything to back this up, but I feel like that's most people. Most people want to prove that they can do something themselves. Most people want to prove that, even if they're stuck on something, that they can kind of fight their way out of it and get something done and get something quality done. And it's admirable. I mean, it's that, it's that fighting spirit, that striving that made you want to hire them in the first place. But when you've got a deadline beating down on you, and you got, somebody trying to be, Captain America or Wonder Woman, and trying to, conquer this thing that they can't solve, and it would be done, and the product would be in better shape if they just asked for help. Like, it's an admirable quality, but there's like a time and a place for it. And my take on it is, you're just never going to draw a whole lot of actual good information out of people in a 15-minute. I know we're going to have to put the explicit tag on this one, because I've called this stand-up meeting bullshit like 20 times, but it's a bullshit meeting.
I disagree. I don't think it's a bullshit meeting.
Okay.
I think they're useful.
Okay, then it's a horse shit meeting.
Okay.
Okay, we're good.
If horse shit is useful, I don't even know.
I'm sure it is.
I think cow shit is more useful. Don't they use that for fertilizer? Anyway.
Yeah, well, a stand-up is less useful than that.
Okay, so I don't know how we got on agile bashing.
Thanks for steering this towards agile. We should have had a stand-up and discussed what we were going to talk about, and then not listen.
No,
to
we shouldn't have, because the stand-up would have been useless, because nobody would have come there. I should just read the issue tracker instead.
You should,
because obviously there's a lot of information in there.
The topic was in there.
The topic. It's not even in the right. What are they called in Trello? The stacks. The
swim lane.
It's in the right card collection. I don't know. Whatever it's called.
Or whatever.
It's in the suggested topics, I think.
I didn't even know we were doing a podcast until like 2 hours ago.
Yeah. So thanks for telling everyone about your. So we can talk about this in the retro.
We do. I will say that is one thing we do tend to do.
But those are useless, so let's stop those.
Yeah. Well, because we don't really ever talk about what we can do better, because I feel like we've got this pretty much nailed down.
Except for these wandering discussions.
Hey, it's a good discussion. If you dangle that agile carrot out in front of me, I'm gonna attack it like a ravenous beast.
Yeah. Anyway, so back to the topic. So we talked about product managers and project managers, and I still think that the mark of a good project manager is someone who deals with scope management. Because they're dealing with timelines, they're the party that's responsible for figuring out, hey, I've got a week and this is what we can do. Like, this is what is feasible to get done. Like, we've pared this down to exactly what exactly what we think will fit there. Like, that's the communication that happens between the team with the estimates, and they're talking to project managers instead of product managers at that point.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's like the big thing for me. Is just product managers, business objectives, project managers, risks, resources, scope, timelines, etc.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think on a bigger team, like if you've got that type of separation, between product and project,
you're lucky.
Yeah, no, I mean, in some ways you are, and in other ways, I mean, you have more managers. But no, I mean, like if you can draw that line, kind of this is what this is, and this is who you go to for this, and this is who you go to for that. And try to eliminate that overlap a little bit, then I think that setup can be really nice. Most of the places that I've been, we haven't had that either, that big of a company or that type of delineation, responsibilities. But, it's a good, I don't know. I like to see, the one thing I'd like to see in all these kind of relationships, and maybe it's just me, maybe it's just because I'm surly most of the time and I'm the only person that's ever experienced this. But the one thing I always like to see is I don't want to say animosity because that's not the right word, but the adversarial relationship between managers, especially not like, I don't know, I don't want to say, I'll just say managers, between the managers and the teams. Like, I'd like to see that kind of disappear. And again, I feel like this kind of goes back, not to reopen the can of agile worms, but when I made the point about people not opening up and not asking for help and not, sharing that they're struggling when they're struggling, like, there's still that like competitive workplace. There's still that, people vying for, whatever that next position might be, or, to validate themselves as, a really skilled junior or really skilled senior or whatever it is. Like, I feel like breaking down that competitive, if you want people to be competitive, like you want people to strive to be better than they were yesterday. Why is that funny?
No.
Right? That should be your stand-up. What did you do yesterday? I got better. But it's like, I don't know. I feel like that's the one big hindrance to making like a software project go smoothly, other than all the other hindrances.
People?
It's not even so much people. Like, I think people are just kind of like, if there's a culture of competition and there's if you're the best 5 people in your position, then there's a chance that you'll get a promotion up to the next level. Like, that type of environment makes people not want to work together because they want to be one of those top 5 people. And if the person sitting next to you is one of those top 5 people, that's, one less slot that's open for you. And so, I don't know. Like, I just feel like it's very adversarial, and I feel like, people feeling like they have to prove themselves, and I don't say this in a mean way. I'm going to try to watch how I phrase it, but it might come out mean. When people take the job or the product or whatever it is that they're working on and refuse to ask for help and refuse to communicate about where they're at out of fear that it might make them look like they're worse, like they're making the whole entire process or product or whatever about themselves and not about what's good for the company, product, team, whatever. And again, I think that's human nature. I've certainly been there myself, and I think probably everybody has. But until you can, until you can kind of get through, or you have a manager that can kind of break through that wall of competition, and until people feel secure in their job and what they're doing, I don't know that you can ever really achieve even close to peak performance. That's like a antifreeze or something. But you know what I mean? Does that make sense? That was still, I didn't mean for that to sound mean or anything. So I think it's human nature. But for me, that's why the stand-ups, I don't think they foster that kind of safe environment.
So stand-ups are dangerous.
They're like Mugger in the Alley dangerous. No, it's just, I don't know. So much of it depends. It's different from company to company and person to person and all that kind of stuff. And it's probably complicated by the fact that you don't have, generally on a team, you don't have 5 or 6 people that have all been writing software for 8 to 15 years that have grown comfortable with being wrong and grown comfortable with not knowing.
Yeah, that's probably very rare.
Right. Yeah. So I'm sure that's a big part of it, but I don't know. It just seems like we got back on this topic again. This isn't about stand-ups or anything. It's just about dealing with people and recognizing, when somebody might be being defensive, when somebody might be, afraid or embarrassed to admit that they don't know something or that they don't know how to do something or that they've been working on mocking PDO for a week.
Yeah, and I agree with you that it's hard for a lot of people because of the whole, I don't want to look like a complete idiot. Like I don't want to look incompetent.
Right.
So I'm not going to tell someone that I'm having trouble with this. And to that, I feel like that's where having a place that people are constantly putting out there what they're working on is useful, because it encourages everyone to kind of share, and they may not. It's probably going to be rare that someone's going to come in and say, well, I'm still working on the same task I was yesterday because I'm too dumb to figure out how to mock PDO. But they're probably going to say, oh, I'm still having trouble writing the tests for this feature that I'm working on. So I'm still working on that. And from that, I found in my experience that even if it's not an official part of stand-up, somebody will generally reach out after that and say, hey, do you want to screen share or whatever, or do you want to, if you're in the same place, like, do you want to look it over real quick, or is there anything that I can do to help you figure that out? And yeah, there's going to be times when someone says, oh no, I got it, and they're in that egotistical, no, I can do this stage. But there's going to be some times when even the most competitive person who feels like they have to be right all the time, they're going to say, yeah, if you can do better than me, knock yourself out. Like they're right. And so I think that works. Like just.
But if it's 2 weeks after you start mocking PDO and they're finally like, look, if you can do it, great. Like you just wasted 2 weeks on, something that you could have asked someone.
Yeah, but they wouldn't have asked it anyway. So it doesn't matter if the stand-ups happened or not because they weren't going to ask
Exactly,
it.
that's my point. Doesn't matter if the stand-ups happen or not.
But if they said it the day like if they had the problem and then for 3 days in a row they're saying I'm still working the same thing because the tests don't work, somebody's going to say something.
But my point is, wouldn't somebody say something if that ticket was sitting in progress for 3 days? Like,
possibly. It depends.
Like, I don't know. I feel like from the example you gave, and I know that no one would do this, so I'm not trying to say that you're wrong about how you. But if someone were to come into a stand-up or whatever, some collection of people meeting, daily progress meeting, whatever the hell you want to call it, and was like, "Hey, I'm still working on this, PDO mock because I'm too dumb to figure out how it works." Like, that's all the information you need to know. Someone would be like, okay, well, why don't we get together in the parking lot, the proverbial parking lot, not the literal parking lot, and we'll make you undumb about this. Like, let's just fix that stupidity.
So this is happening at the daily non-stand-up progress status meeting?
No, like if I theoretically this could happen at any point. Like somebody's just saying, I don't know how to do this. It's all it takes somebody to say. It's okay, well, let's sit down and we'll teach you how to do this. Right? And then it gets done in a day.
Yeah.
Or a day after, however long it took them to realize that they didn't know how to do that.
Okay.
But people come in, if somebody comes in and says, well, yeah, so this is almost done, I'm just having a little bit of trouble writing the tests, that completely minimizes what the actual problem is.
Yeah, which is what most people are going to say.
Right. You're not having trouble writing the test. You have no clue what you're doing. And that's fine. And no one's...
Yeah, but from a person's perspective, they're having trouble writing a test. Like, it's not like if they knew that the problem was they couldn't mock PDO properly, they could figure out the solution to that by Googling it, right? But to them, like their update is, I'm almost done with this. All I have to do is finish writing some tests, and I've been working on that for a day. And maybe that's abnormal, maybe that's normal. But if you don't have a baseline, if you haven't established a baseline based on previous work or previous, status updates or previous ticket comments or whatever, you don't know if that's abnormal or if there's something that someone would need to ask them about. So yeah, you could get this information somewhere else. I think it works very well in stand-ups.
So here's my thing, okay? Because I've done a lot of stand-up bashing here tonight, and just kind of general bashing. I'm going to propose a solution that's, in my opinion, better than a stand-up if you are in a position to implement it. Okay, so if you're a manager and you're currently herding your team into a small little conference room where you all have to stand the whole time because agile, you don't want people to get too comfortable. Here's my, right, so most people do their stand-up at the same time every day, right?
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be 15 minutes, right?
Well, it doesn't have to be exactly 15 minutes, but
it should be less. But you have a general time that you aim for with these meetings to try to keep them brief, and because you're making everyone uncomfortable, you want them to be uncomfortable briefly. You're doing a 15 to 20 minute meeting once a day in the morning where everyone is laying out their whole entire day from yesterday, their whole entire day going forward, and anything that's blocked them in that whole 24-hour span. And that's all you get from those people the whole day, unless there's some parking lot issue or something else, right? I feel like that is, I don't want to. I mean, I guess I can't say anything any more aggressive than any of the other things I've said tonight. I feel like that's a lazy way to manage. In the sense that you're basically relying on someone else, whether it's another team member or whatever, to tell you that something's gone horribly wrong. Because normally those things don't come out, like that. Like if it's that week-long PDO mocking thing that we were hypothetically discussing, or we were actually discussing it, but it was a hypothetical situation. Like it's going to come out when it's like been a ridiculously long time. Like I feel like if you're managing a team and a people and a project, like you shouldn't need them to tell you that something is behind or that something, even if we just limit it to those specific cases where they're just like, like make an HTML form and it's like a month later and they're like, I don't have it done. Like you, as a manager or somebody that's kind of keeping a pulse on the team and what's going on, like you should know that. It should never get to that point, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like you have to micromanage to do that.
Yeah, I think
That's
probably an extreme case, yeah.
Like, I mean, but with anything. I mean, there's a difference between going to someone and pestering them and saying, hey, like, how's this coming along? Are you done yet? Did you get it done? Are you having trouble? What's going on? Doing that. I think just from talking to people go to the bathroom, people get coffee, people get up. You can see how people are sitting at their desk or how they're tweeting or how they're, give you some sort of indication what kind of mood they're in, and at least gives you an opportunity to say, hey, you see them at the Keurig, and you say, how's everything going today? Like, it doesn't have to be like a grand inquisition, right? It's just, you just get a feel for people. They're going to open up to you more at the coffee machine when it's just the two of you than they are in front of a whole team. I don't know. To me, it just seems like, well, we're not going to worry about it until someone tells me that there's a problem, and then the whole team's going to be like, oh, we can help. And then by that point, you've already wasted probably at least, 33% of however long that ticket was story point estimated to take. That's my take.
I mean, that's fine. I think.
I'm being surly today.
Yeah. I mean, to me, like the main benefits to having a regularly scheduled short meeting, and for us, my team stand-ups are probably average 4 minutes, maybe 5 minutes total. So it's like about a minute a person, give or take, which works out very well.
Yeah,
sometimes
I would imagine so.
Sometimes it then turns into discussions afterwards, which is perfectly fine. It works. But to me, the benefits come from, having this regular meeting where we know what you're supposed to bring. Like it makes sure that everyone is kind of on topic. So having the stand-up format, like those questions that you seem to dislike, they make sure that everyone is just focusing on explaining, what they are proposing, like what their goal is for the day, effectively. Like that's what I treat them as saying, hey, yesterday I did or did not accomplish what I thought I was going to, and then here's what my goal would be today. Like this is what I would like to have accomplished, and then.
Right.
That works as a way to help people themselves or hold themselves accountable, because it's one thing for a manager to tell you, I would like for you to have this done by the end of the day today. It's another thing for you to say, my goal is to have this done by the next time we have this meeting. And then the next meeting, when you say, I got it done or I didn't get it done, you're self kind of managing. So it's useful for your manager because they can see what they can see in your own words, and based on your issue track or whatever, they can figure it out. But it's also useful for you to just physically express that, or verbally express that and say it. I think that's useful because other people hear it. And then the other side of it is, for us, a lot of times when stories or tasks are in similar areas or dealing with similar problems, if I hear someone else talking about something that I thought, that relates to what I'm working on, that's a great opportunity for me to talk to them and figure out how we can make a general solution rather than just each of us do our own thing and then later figure out that we repeated work. That works out very well, I think. So I think it has, or stand-ups to me have benefits outside of just a way to keep tabs on what people are doing. If that's all you're using them for, then I agree. They're probably a waste of time. But to me, it's about providing a platform or forum for other information to come to light, even if it's hidden, essentially. I need to stop saying essentially, but
essentially
if it's hidden.
No, so I should probably clarify, because I've been surly and probably very general with what I've been saying. My opinions on the topic are completely based on my own experiences, not like, I think I've said before, I think theoretically, like if like kind of in a perfect world, like with estimates, like Agile would be a really good way to do things if like you took the people out of it, basically, or took human nature out of it, let's say. If you can run a 4-minute stand-up consistently, I'm going to go ahead and propose, put this into the manifesto, that there's a new Agile role called Agile Wizard, and you could be the first one of those. Because in my life, I don't know if I've ever been in a stand-up where one person finished in under 4 minutes.
Well, you obviously deal with people who break the rules and go well beyond what they should be saying.
Right.
Well, yesterday I opened my editor and there's some problems.
So let me detail these problems for you.
Let me explain the architectural issues with this particular approach. And dude, that's when whoever's in charge of the stand-up, the team leader, the scrum master, whatever, whoever's in charge of your stand-up needs to tell them, hey,
shut the hell up.
Be quiet. I understand that you want to get into the details of it. They should be talked about afterwards with relevant people. You need to just tell us, what's the problem in as few words as possible. Like that. Yeah. I think that's important.
No, I agree. Respectful. I agree. If you're gonna do it, like if you can keep it at 4 minutes, like if you're gonna do it, and if the only, I guess that's maybe where I missed the boat a little bit. Like, it seems like the only useful thing that might maybe come out of a stand-up, and it would only be useful if the situation arose, would be to get people talking. Like, it's not useful. Like, nobody else, like, unless you have a problem that somebody else can help fix, no one gives a shit what you're doing. Like, hey, we're all working on the same thing. If I really want to know what you're doing, I'll go look at your tickets. Right? It's not it's like the rare, I won't say rare, but the not everyday situations where somebody like needs help with something, or they're doing something that they don't know how to do. So if you could just plan your stand-up meetings around those obviously predictable times when someone's going to not know what to do, then I think you got yourself a winner.
Yeah. All right. So that was a good episode on managing and project managers and Agile. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
I want to talk about Agile more.
Okay.
No, I'm just
Is there anything
relevant?
Any other insights you had into management or dealing with managers that you would like to?
No, I mean, again, I know I'll just clear this up here, try to save a little bit of face. I mean, if Agile works for you and your team and you're good with it or whatever, like cool, I guess. You know, I'm more of a proponent of doing what works best for your team than I am like for Agile or against Agile or for any particular like defined set of rules or whatever they're called. Probably rules. You know, so I mean, if you got something that works for your team, like do it. And if the stand-up meetings, if you get value out of them, do them. I don't know. I almost come at it from the standpoint of like, don't be like, if the meeting isn't adding value to your day and you're not getting anything out of it, like, it's okay to not do it.
Yeah, that's true. Any meeting.
Right. Like when you're setting up your week or whatever, especially if you're doing one of these like everyday stand-up things, like you should be able to answer the question, like, is it worthwhile to have this meeting today? And like be able to answer it honestly. If the answer is no, then just don't have it. That's all. But I mean, most of the stand-up meetings that I've been in my, we'll call it Agile career, have been completely pointless. It's either been people that tell me that say they need help and then they don't accept it, or people that always have, you know, their shit locked down. And so it's like, okay, I'm sitting here listening to you talk about the same ticket that you were working on yesterday because it's a, you know, extra large t-shirt. So, and whether I ever come around to Agile or ever see it actually work in like real life, even if I make a complete 180 from how I feel about it now, like I will always propose doing what works best for the team, regardless of what some bullshit manifesto says. So there.
I'm not sure if that was saving face or not, but great.
Where are you? Hold on. Something weird happened. Oh, there we go. Sorry, you were using not my headphones. That's my fault.
Yeah. So, all right, cool. So I think that we've discussed this topic as an extra small t-shirt. Yeah.
A rainbow trout.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess moral of the story is there's going to be managers in your life. Don't always take the bait to become a manager. That's not the only path forward. Understand the roles and responsibilities of different types of managers, specifically project and product managers, and yeah, you're gonna have to work with these people. And then finally, agile stand-ups could or could not be useful depending on who you are and where you are, and if you're Matt Frost or not. So,
well, if you're a manager and you see like you're going through this routine that just isn't doing anything for anyone, just
drop it.
Yeah, or at least talk about it. At least like, hey, do we really need to do this? Like, does anyone really get anything out of this? And if not, then find another way to accomplish the same goal of getting nothing accomplished.
And if you're a manager and anyone ever gets a hint or gives you a hint that some process that you have going on may be problematic to them or may not be helping, you should listen to that and figure out if there is truth in it and then do something about it.
Like shank them.
Yeah, or shank them. I guess those are two equal.
Don't shank them.
Equally effective strategies for dealing with feedback. Great. So that is the Loosely Coupled Podcast, episode 26. Thank you very much for listening, and we will see you next time.
Later.